Yeah, I mean, I think this is just a historical inflection point more than an actual signal of any concrete deal, and that a process of eh, of the process of Israel's dissolution, or at least the dissolution of Israeli exceptionalism in American life, is accelerating rapidly. That's all we can say. But I agree with you. The MOU will be eventually watered down. And the key lever for Israel to unravel the MOU is in Lebanon, which is why they're consistently escalating in Lebanon. Our correspondent at the Gray Zone, Wyatt Reed, was in the South interviewing people who were attempting to return to the rubble of their homes or their homes, and many of them had to turn back because Israel continued to escalate and was enacting new massacres, killing scores of people a day. The action around the Ali al-Tahrir Hill, where it's said that Hezbollah has a base and Israel's been unable to reach it with its tank columns. There's a tank that uh, reportedly is still stuck at the base of the hill with a commander inside and three other soldiers, has been extremely demoralizing for Israel. It prompted the Twitter X tirade by Itamar Ben-Gvir, the security minister, calling for making thousands of Lebanese mothers weep for every one Israeli mother who weeps, and declaring that all of Lebanon must burn. This really exposed the hideous face of Israel's governing coalition to everyone. And, even the arch-Zionist CNN anchor Jake Tapper felt compelled to condemn this. This is what's being brought out of Israel's demented soul through its failures in Lebanon. But it has to stay in Lebanon in order now to sabotage the MOU. AIPAC, the main arm of the Israel lobby in the US, attempted to portray those four invading Israeli soldiers who were attempting to attack Hezbollah inside Lebanese territory as victims of a Kristallnacht-like pogrom, declaring that Hezbollah just killed 4 Jews because it enjoys killing Jews. They're actually trying to elicit sympathy for invading Israeli soldiers. And every time they do so on X, those posts get ratioed with thousands of comments, essentially mocking and taunting them. There is no sympathy for what Israel is doing there. J.D. Vance was asked in Switzerland by an Arab reporter about Israel's genocidal rampage in Lebanon, actually using the term genocide, and J.D. Vance declared he didn't, in the past you would have seen Joe Biden or Barack Obama or whoever their underlings were denounced that reporter for using the term genocide, but J.D. Vance simply shrugged and said, no one is doing more than us to try to tamp down on the violence in Lebanon. And if the MOU is to be enforced, Israel is going to be restricted in Lebanon. And that will be a military failure, that could actually be a more devastating military failure for Israel than Iran was. Iran was a more catastrophic failure for the United States. But at this point, it looks like that's where they're heading, and that Lebanon will be the main lever for unraveling the MOU. And to the extent that Hezbollah is going to continue to inflict losses with FPV drones, with Cornet missiles and other anti-tank weapons on the Israelis, the MOU survives. And then just another quick point, because you brought up Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson declared, I think yesterday in an interview with a podcast, that he was done with the Republican Party. Tucker Carlson comes out of the real center of the Republican Party, the mainstream of the Republican Party. He was actually not considered like an extremist or a far-right person or a populist until just a few years ago. His father was a major Republican figure who served as an ambassador in Republican administrations, was close to the Reagan administration. This is like Republican Party elite. and he's declaring that he can't be part of the Republican Party anymore because it doesn't serve the United States. It essentially serves Israel. Tucker Carlson could potentially form a third party that would include figures like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz, and Thomas Massie. Many of the figures who've been pushed out by the Israel lobby, who have a lot of cachet within the conservative grassroots and also have a lot of respect on what I would call the populist left, which Representative Ro Khanna of California is attempting to lead right now. And he'll probably run for, I think he'll run in the Democratic primary. So let's just say they do that. They're going to kneecap the Republican candidate in 2028, unless that candidate is J.D. Vance, who Tucker Carlson has been close to. Tucker Carlson's son worked under J.D. Vance until he was forced out by the Israel lobby. And that, but having that contingent, the Tucker contingent, you could call it, will force J.D. Vance to take a harder line against Israel. And it's something that I wished would take place with the Democrats, but you only have the Green Party, which the Democrats have successfully kept off ballots nationally and in state races, most recently in the California governor race, to prevent there being any lever of restraint on the Democratic Party's pro-Israel insanity. I think, it's shaping up to be a fascinating 2028 primary in both parties because the base has dropped out on pro-Israel support and the only thing left is legalized bribery.
Yeah, I think the third party would do much good actually, because when you have this polarized two-party system, one would always, well, it's very hard for one side to drop off to the other one. But if there's a third party, it doesn't even have to win. It's enough that it forces the other parties to moderate themselves if they want to hold on to this this electoral base. Just a last quick question though. Given that so much is at stake for Israel, they might lose their unconditional American backing, the whole policy of peace through strength, if you will, that is based on this clean break approach, greater Israel. I mean, all of this seems to be being risked at the moment. What do you think Israel could do in desperation? Do you think an actual use of a nuclear weapon to show its determination would be out of the question? Or I just have a hard time. I don't see them backing down or adjusting to new realities, which then begs the question, what remains for Israel?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's the question on everyone's mind right now, because anyone who's paying close attention to this, who still has their critical faculties, understands that Israel is an anachronistic state. It's a high-tech nuclearized colonial state that exists out of place in history and outside the reality of normal international relations, and wants to just unravel international law as a matter of its own survival, has no borders, it refuses to set borders, is perpetually occupying millions of people who actually comprise a majority between the river and the sea. And so this lunatic rogue state, in order to maintain its ethno-supremacist character, is prone to some dastardly acts and is capable of anything. I don't think we've seen the worst of what Israel's capable of. It's boasted of its ability to infiltrate common household communications equipment like pagers or cell phones and turn them into explosives. So what will it do when its back is against the wall? Will it engage in assassinations of leadership who are not, members of, non-state resistance groups like Hezbollah or Hamas? Has it already done so? Will it, begin to get violent against members of the media? What is it capable of? I don't want to speculate. I just know that's where so many people's minds are going right now as Israel grows increasingly desperate. And we see, for example, a former IDF Persian language spokesman declare that America needs a new Pearl Harbor to understand what the stakes are. That, we should worry about what they're capable of. But what they're doing right now is attempting to elicit sympathy through the conjuring of bogus anti-Semitism hoaxes to the point where prominent Canadian Zionists have been hoping for the past 24 hours or so and wishing that this Montreal shooter, who is said to be sort of, I mean, it's a crude way of putting it, but like an incel who hated women or resented that men weren't able to, that women weren't available to men like him, that he were actually an anti-Semite who was out there shooting Jews. And they're doing everything they can against all evidence to convince the public that this shooter wanted to kill Jews. Just as AIPAC was attempting to portray IDF invading soldiers in Lebanon as Kristallnacht victims who were killed just because they're Jewish. And then you have this whole global phenomenon from Australia to the UK. I mean, it's mainly in the Commonwealth states, Australia, the UK, and now Canada, where there are these gun-for-hire anti-Semitism attacks in which mostly youth who are from poor backgrounds, like mostly like lumpen proletariat types, are being paid in crypto through anonymous online foreign actors to carry out low-level property damage attacks outside Jewish communal sites, as well as like the US consulate in Toronto, and strange Telegram channels are claiming credit for them for these attacks under the name of something called Ashab Yamin al-Islamiyya, or like the right hand of Islam, and claiming that they're part of the Iran-sponsored resistance. And it all looks very shady to me. It all looks very shady when we consider that in 2016 and 2017, in 2016, a wave of thousands of anti-Semitic robocalls to Australian Jewish centers actually originated from Israel, and an Israeli teen was arrested after Australian intelligence fingered the culprit. But Iran is blamed for all of it. Iran's ambassador had been removed from Australia after being blamed for these strange pay-for-play anti-Semitism attacks. Iran was blamed by Keir Starmer for a stabbing in London by a mentally ill man who had stabbed 2 Jews after stabbing a Muslim flatmate. Iran's being blamed, but Iran doesn't gain anything from this. Iran gains nothing. There's only one state which gains from these strange pay-for-play anti-Semitism attacks, and it's the one with a long history of false flag attacks, for example, bombing synagogues in Iraq to compel the Iraqi Jewish community to move to Israel in the early 1950s. Crimes that were documented and confirmed by the Israeli revisionist historian Avi Shleim, or the Lavon affair in Egypt, which actually collapsed Egypt's Jewish community and set the stage for the 1956 war. It's Israel. And so we really have to be asking what they're capable of with their backs increasingly against the wall. And we have to be documenting it and pushing our leadership to do something to restrain this psychotic state. And I think one idea that I had that I put forward in an interview I did earlier this week or last week, I'm losing track, is United Against a Nuclear Israel campaign. There was throughout the United States, United Against a Nuclear Iran, run by Israeli cutouts like Jason Brodsky. And there were big billboards in Times Square, but Iran didn't even have an active nuclear program. Israel has a secret nuclear program. Its Samson option, in which it could use that nuclear program as blackmail against the West, has been well documented. And it's time to educate the public about the threat Israel poses. It's an apocalyptic threat, as we also explain how necessary it is to dismantle its apartheid system, which really is at the core of the global economic crisis that's afflicting almost everyone on the planet right now.
Well, Max, thanks so much for taking time out of your very busy schedule. And I will leave a link to the Gray Zone in the description. So thank you very much.
Yeah, we've got a new piece up about these gun for hire attacks at the Gray Zone. So thegrayzone.com is where you'll find it.